So today's update has already been unboxed, and this is the main reason. This, as you can see, I've already also opened it. So we got One Piece Season 10 Voyage 1. The idea being that my friend was really excited that this was coming back out. Timing-wise, we really needed to watch it when it came out, and, you know, it's kind of a birthday present for him. A little late for that, but, you know, unfortunately means no unboxing and no unplasticking of One Piece here. But, you know, it's kind of nice that it returned. I will be talking about the watching of it in the later half of this video, as usual. But, let's get going. We've got Non Biyori Vacation, which I don't think I had. But honestly, I haven't looked it up yet. I guess I'll find out later if I did something silly here. But this is a movie, so I don't think I have this. Japanese with English subtitles, Region A, movie on one disc, 71 minutes. Special features there. We got Japanese promos, TV spots, also available from Sentai, and finally, the blur is gone. Alright. Yeah, that's quite an image. Next up, we have Bungo Stray Dogs' Dead Apple. And let's uncover this person's poor sexy face, which has been stickered to death. There we go. It's not a galactic Bishonen, but he's still a Bishonen, and he should be shown in, let's see, regions A and B. English dub, and special features is just promo videos. In the movie that precedes Season 3. Which I kind of consider a weird way to say, because that means it's in between Seasons 2 and 3, unless it can be watched at any time, but it would precede Season 3, or this came out after Season 3, and you watch this, I don't know. The plastic in the corner is just holding on and making it tricky to remove. Alright. Let's see. So we've got, this was Authors Never Die. Wow, that does remind me of another anime, which I'm not going to mention. Oh, this is a DVD Blu-ray combination. Cool. It's interesting, the Blu-ray says feature film and special features, which makes me think it's not on there, but the special feature was just promo videos, so I don't know. Oh well. That's Bungo Stray Dogs, and then last, but probably actually the one I'm most likely going to prioritize watching over this next week, but Mob Psycho 100 Season 2. Or maybe just Mob Psycho 102, which is Season 2 probably. I don't think I missed anything regarding the first one. I do remember enjoying it. We'll have to see if, you know, more season lives up to what I would want to see. Interesting. It's sticking right there. I can feel it, the little piece of glue. It's surprising that's the only thing holding it on then. Just this one little piece of glue. Well, okay, let's take a look at the back here. Total Controller, Total Chaos. Special features. That's a lot of special features. Or a lot of words for OVA, the First Spirits and Such Company, Trip A Journey that mends the hearts and heals the soul. Then we have Episode 6 storyboards, behind the scenes animation, TV spots, and textless closing song. Down here I noticed it's regions A and B, and there's an English dub, so, you know, if you want all that stuff, you know, that just pretty much has all the things. Alright, let's actually take a look at the box a little bit more. Oh, look, there's all that information there. That's why we read from the bottom, because that's kind of small and hard to read. So let's begin with this. This is an interesting artwork. Like, I'm not quite sure what it feels like to me, but there's something about it that just feels... I don't know. That's Blu-rays 1 and 2. This is DVDs 1 and 2. I hear what sounds like a piece of broken plastic. Oh, there it is. Fell into my hand. And then a good look at this. Oh, I see. For a while there I thought that this disc image was repeated for discs, but actually this is that in there. Don't remember if that's a character we know or not. I mean, I remember them, you know. And then next up we have this, which is the filler box. Enamel pin, 6 art cards, acrylic foam charm, and 2 embroidered patches. That's actually quite a number of little things. I mean, they'll be flat, and I'll go through them pretty quick, I think, because I usually do. Especially since, you know, I'm particularly lazy about these cards. It looks like it's a lot of the same artwork we already have on there. But also, it tends to be kind of hard to put them back in there. These are instructions for the iron-on patches, which would be these. That's a Mob Psycho 100 too. And then, Sensei, teacher. I don't remember names. I don't remember. Oh, this is the phone charm thing, and that's the little guy. Jesus, I saw his name on YouTube just yesterday, and I don't remember. There's a pin of Mob. Straightforward enough. I don't think... This one just says limited edition, so this may be the entirety of it. And we've got an art book. Good amount of text talking about some of the art too, it looks like. But here's this week's anime DVD collection update. Okay, I'm just going to talk about these in the order that I watched them. First up, Demon Lord Retry, which is a bit unfortunate. There are things about this anime that were kind of neat, kind of cool. You know, it's really neat to see a show go, okay, everybody's done an isekai, let's do our slight spin on it. And some of that was, I thought, pretty good and interesting, but this is definitely a very flawed series. And I think, I think the biggest problem with it is it's kind of directionless. So I guess as a thought, like one of the biggest problems I noticed watching this was they introduced our main character, and he's basically controlling his Demon Lord character in a world where a Demon Lord was summoned to, which has some aspects of his game that he was developing, but doesn't seem to be it per se, and he's there, blah blah blah. So he's actually given 2 characters, and this kind of shows some of the problems with the show in general, I guess, where you know, both characters are kind of cool in different ways, but it doesn't feel like they really led up to him needing to transform between them, other than as a it felt like they kind of had to force it to happen, because he kind of doesn't want to use one or the other. Well, he doesn't want to use the other, rather. But he also never really talked about anything that would make us think that. The situation didn't strike us as something where it absolutely needed to happen. Instead, it just sort of was, and the only purpose it seems to have served is to just have a different set of characters liking him, but being that other character, I guess. And then they didn't even do anything to make it where
that's the thing of the show. It's just a fact where it's just like, oh, every once in a while he'll choose to do that in order to handle a situation so that these characters he runs into happen to really like him. I don't know. And in that regard, you can kind of tell its goal seems to be throw a lot of cool stuff out there, but it doesn't feel like it necessarily has direction, which is unfortunate because it didn't feel like it didn't have that at the beginning. It just sort of felt like, it was a show with, oh yeah, let's come up with a lot of cool stuff. And it's kind of interesting because, sometimes you can kind of notice these patterns where it's like, all right, whoever made this show is trying to show off, maybe show off isn't quite the right word, but they're trying to put a whole bunch of knowledge and information about, like, say, guns or tanks or something like that in here. What the fucking hell is that? Probably this. Okay. Anyways, so then you'll have other shows, sort of like the Raildex series, where it's like, yeah, this person likes to show all these really neat names, and that's why some of the cooler aspects of the show have, like, multiple names for no reason, and that's kind of cool. And then you'll have something where it's like, and this is one where they just want to kind of show off, like, these designs and ideas, and I think Overlord kind of falls under that. And usually a lot of these shows are good, maybe because of these, maybe because those are worked into other elements, and this one seems to kind of have that Overlord thing where it's like, well, we're gonna design all these really neat ideas, but it didn't really seem to have any idea of what it wanted to really do with them from a interaction perspective, storytelling perspective. It's just like, oh, this is cool, oh, this is cool, and they're kind of neat, but you watch it and it doesn't really feel like there's a real direction per se. And it's kind of interesting because it also does this thing where he seems to be building up a little town, which is very reminiscent of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. But that one seems to be a very building things up from the very get-go. So there's a momentum where Rimuru begins by building himself up, basically. And then we see him introduced to the world, and then he immediately starts kind of building things up in the world in a way that's, oh, here's an immediate confrontation, but then the payoff is world building. You watch Reincarnated as a Slime partially because, or I think a huge part of the reason you watch that is because world building isn't quite the right word, but that's the only thing I can think of where it's just about building things up, things developing, I guess. Developing the world, maybe. So world building usually means, oh, we're expanding on the idea of this expanded world by introducing more lore, more characters, or maybe important stories or things like that. So that, you might focus on these characters, but you're building the world that they live in so that you understand that world, and usually that's something intended to make you think, oh, that's cool. And that shouldn't be confused with the world building I'm referring to where, yes, because it's almost like character development, except on a communal level, even though our main character is kind of there, and I don't know that he develops this. Anyways, I'm going aside. So, all of that, coming back to here, there are things about this that I thought were really neat. You can kind of tell that the people who work around this are like, oh yeah, the smoking guy in the suit that looks like a Chinese assassin or something like that. That's cool. And I don't necessarily agree, but I can kind of understand what they were going through, and I thought, in terms of how they were portraying the character, it was fine. It's just kind of weird because they have him doing that in a world where it's like, I don't know that they have cigarettes, and so I don't know that this would mean as much in the world, and they kind of leave this big question mark about whether or not it means anything because nobody reacts to that stuff per se. And it's weird, and if this is all that's out, it is woefully incomplete because it was about to do something and I don't remember what. I don't know, this past week feels like it's been longer than a week. In fact, I'm trying to think if there was anything Animal Crossing I would even talk about, but I don't know. Let's go on to the next thing. I guess I'll put these over here. Why the hell are you here, teacher? Question mark. And okay, so on the inside, you had the naked girls that surprised me in last week's video, and now I kind of understand a bit better. These are all the teachers. These girls are the teachers. Now, I've only seen the two on the front. I've only seen like 3 episodes, and only the ones involving her. And it's pretty much about student guys with hot teachers. That description would make me... It would sound like I was describing something like Colorful. And this is not to be confused with the movie called Colorful, which I think is completely different. But there's an older TV series called Colorful, which was pretty much just about guys perving over girls. But it is highly notable because it does feature a little thing where for some reason a 50-meter tall high school girl comes out of Tokyo Bay, Godzilla style kind of, except that she's just hanging around doing teenage girl things, and it is hilarious. And then she just, ends up walking back in the sea. It's stupid. And this isn't absurd like that. It isn't even absurd like the first episode where the guy, I'm trying to remember which one because it had Colorful had recurring characters, but there was a hot teacher teaching them English, in particular emphasizing the difference between the L and the R sound, which for a lot of, I know for Japanese, but I think other Asian languages might also have trouble making the distinction between them. But that's a good lesson for them to learning English, blah blah blah. Anyways, that one was funny. It sticks with you. You kind of remember it. It's not notable. And this one, it's not absurd like that. But it is absurd in its own way, where for the 3 episodes I've seen, our main character keeps ending up in weird situations with the teacher he considers to be a living evil incarnate demon sort of thing. Like, I guess she's got a reputation of being a ridiculously hard-ass teacher at the school, and nobody wants to get on her bad side. And, it begins with him going into the men's room on the far side of campus, and somehow he's ended up locked in a toilet stall where she's in there. Because the women's room was closed, he should have known. Blah, 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 blah. Because the episodes are of shorter length, it kind of works out from not tiring itself out. The 3 episodes I saw were kind of amusing, I thought. Also, definitely very erotic, because that's half of the goal. But surprisingly, a little more developmenty than I thought, where it's not just like a bunch of one-offs, but there is a relationship between him and her that pretty much travels at the same pace as any series where there's confrontation between a male-female main leads who obviously are intended to get together by the end of the series. Which is kind of weird in this case because they're, a high school kid and his teacher. But, you set that aside, and it is working on those grounds, and it seemed pretty amusing in those regards. But I'm trying to remember if I can remember any details and then comment about them from the perspective of non-detailed, but I don't know. Again, this has been a really confusing week. And I'm trying to remember what I was doing at the same time while watching this. So, take my thoughts with a grain of salt, because I'm not sure if it's the kind of thing that can definitely grab your attention on its own merits, which might mean that well, of course, they won't be able to do that without unless you're going in there for the erotic aspects of it. But I can't remember. Anyways, hopefully I can remember more about Season 10 Voyage 1, One Piece. So this is the return of the One Piece TV series to DVD releases here, which is nice. This one, it's not One Piece at its best, but the trick with One Piece is it can be really hard to tell when it's going to build up into something really awesome. And sometimes the most awesome things at One Piece start at some very basic, simple roots. And this seems to be slightly above some of the worst in that regard, even though a lot of those worst ended up being the betters of this one. So it's really hard to say what to say for certain. But at this point, this late in the series, I did notice a slightly nice return to form, where I talked about one thing that's really nice about early One Piece is it really clearly defines what its characters are good at, and some of their ideas and suggestions and stuff seem to pander around that. This one had a similar thing, where it's like, oh, how do we want to solve this problem? And I think, a couple characters list their primary traits. Oh, Luffy stretches. Oh, Roronoa Zoro cuts. Things like that. Oh, and Sanji kicks. I think those are like the most obvious examples. But it wasn't, like peppered a whole lot in there. So this is kind of one of those One Piece continuing to be One Piece sorts of things, if that makes sense. There's, happy food, happy conversations, interesting this, interesting that. So a lot of One Piece staples. One thing I really liked is... So one of the things that really feels good about watching One Piece over time is the world building stuff I talked about, where it feels like One Piece can introduce characters and then unexpectedly bring them back, which makes it feel like even if you have certain encounters, they feel like they could be more meaningful. I think a really good example was the end of what was called Season 1 on the Funimation release. I don't know what that is for any other perspective, where they brought together a couple of elements, I think. And I don't know if I remember the time frame correctly, but I think it was around then where it's like, oh yeah, this and that and that and that. And you kind of felt like, they're world building. They're not just introducing one-off villains or one-off villagers or one-off friends. Some of that stuff comes back. And there was a little bit of that here. Actually, maybe a good bit. New stuff introduced. Not sure what to think about all the new stuff. Nothing that was like horrible. Like this one introduced a samurai character. And he does seem to have what I'd call batitude. But at the same time, they've done some amusing things with him. And it'd be interesting to see where it goes from there. This is both interesting in terms of what they've had him say, what they've had him do. He kind of said some things that are like, that's not a fun personality trait. But then they did other things with that. They're like, oh, but that is actually pretty hilarious. I think I got a couple of chuckles from this one. And yeah, so basically, it was enjoyable. It wasn't one of those things where it's just like, yeah, it's back. It's like, nice, this is back. Okay, yeah, this is okay. Let's hope it keeps coming out, because if we have to wait a couple of years between this and the next one, then this one is not going to feel like it's worth it. But if we wait 2 or 3 months or something like that, which I think is the usual release rate, I should probably take a look, then I think it would be good. So far, it's off to a pretty good start. The only issue I have is, if I remember correctly, I don't remember the timing of everything, but they did try to make it where it feels like the characters are supposed to feel more powerful after the time jump in the series. But like I said, because it was doing this kind of return to form thing, I almost feel like there's maybe a couple steps back. And I'm not quite sure if that really long-armed guy has devil fruit powers or not, because those don't seem like very natural arms. Or have I seen something like that before and forgotten? One Piece is a pretty big series. And even though I'm way behind everybody else, I'm sure, this still has up to episode 587, which means I've seen 1,000 episodes of One Piece before this even came out. So, things to think about. Yeah, but, that's my thoughts. It's nice for it to be back. It's doing a good job of still being it. There's maybe been a couple shuffles backwards, but a couple shuffles forward, so it's about the same. And the real question is, what does the rest of this story arc do with whatever it's going to do, with whatever material it has? And, I'm not going to say that I'm particularly excited for that. I'm actually a pretty cynical person. If it doesn't seem like that, then I guess, I don't know. You can imagine something about the most cynical people are former optimists or something like that. And I don't know if that's actually the case. All I know is I am curious about seeing the next one. I am glad that my friend will motivate me to see it, because even as it is, there was good stuff that came out this week, or interesting looking stuff, and I just didn't make progress. But yeah, that's it. So other than that, trying to remember where I was last week in Animal Crossing, and I can say for certain that I've successfully got my 5-star. Don't remember if I had as of this time last week, but no, got 5-star on my island. Cool beans. I also got the S rank on my Happy Home Academy, or whatever it's called. Which pretty much just leaves me, I guess, filling out the island a little bit more. Maybe, yeah, I'm still trying to reach blue roses. The real problem is, some steps in that process, you just end up running into brick walls where it's like you're waiting for the random number generator to generate, oh yes, here's that super red I want, breed 2 of these together, 25% chance of blue. Whereas the oranges I'm breeding together, they have a 1 in 16 chance of blue, but they have a 1 in 8 chance of the super red that I'm talking about, which is why, I'm expecting to get the super red first, but of course by the time I have 2 of them, I might already have a blue. But I need to create something that breeds blues. Which is, of course, blues cloning themselves, but I'm going to want to do whatever I can to increase the chance of blues, and the super reds are what I'm still aiming for, because worst case, these super oranges are just going to be stubborn little shits and not give me anything, so blah 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 blah. And in other words, I'm still blue rose breeding, but I am starting to accommodate the space that I'm using for all this blue rose genetic engineering. I'm trying to concentrate roses into one place so that I can maybe start focusing on other flowers. They may have their own problems, but they won't be blue problematic issues. In other words, I don't even think any of them will require that long of a chain, because there's just not as much to do with them. Anyways, yeah, stuff. So, yeah, I guess that's that. And I know what you're thinking. It's like, I hope Gigafrost is aware that the Isle of Something expansion goes live sometime this week. And yeah, I'm aware. I don't know what the timing for all that's going to be like, because I still want to maintain this Animal Crossing stuff, but I do want to do that stuff. I did make sure to get my Generation 8 starters with their hidden abilities. I might have to rebreed a couple of those, because I never created a final version of Grookey, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with him, because nothing jumped out to me as saying, oh yeah, I want that. Whereas Inteleon is just kind of nice water special attacker in a generation where a lot more of them seem to be physical attackers. And his thing will help a lot, because it's just like, yeah, well, might as well use Snipe Shot, just increase the chance of critical hit. Well, if I think the one I had also had an item to increase that, and if I have an ability that also increases the amount of damage when that happens, that would be pretty cool, which I think is what Sniper does. And then of course Libero Score Bunny is terrifying, potentially. So I guess I'm gonna work on that when I get back into doing Pokemon. I just take these nice long breaks. I try to pay attention to things like I got my Gigantamax Meowth, and I know there's a lot of every Gigantamax happening for the rest of this month. So eventually I will be picking Pokemon back up again, and I guess my anime watching is probably going to suffer a little. But, oh well, I'll talk to you about all that stuff. I still don't know what to think about the, I guess it's the Crown Tundra is the name of this first expansion, I think. Or was it the Isle of Armor? It's one or the other. That's the 2 expansion names. Okay. Whichever one is first, I'll give my thoughts on that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess other than that, I've just been watching random stuff. Mostly rewatching random isekai because I think I had a couple of them piled here, and I finally figured out what was wrong with my DVD ripping thing. So I could rip the DVDs finally back onto the digital server, so then I can just fire them up and jump around and say, oh yeah, this scene. Oh, that really riled me up. And this one was really satisfying and all that stuff. But, you know, that's just rewatching bits and pieces of a lot of already existing stuff. Technically, I do that every week, so there's nothing to really report there. So I'll go ahead and wrap this video up here. Y'all, have a nice week.